Okay. So first of all, I would like to thank all the attendees for sparing the time to attend this session. The topic for today is management of anger. As you already know that this problem of the problem of anger that we face in our daily lives is something that is perhaps a cause of some of the major problems that occur in interpersonal relationships in our dealings with our corporate clients or in our dealings with our seniors as well as juniors. So what we are going to discuss today is, how we can manage this anger, and perhaps is anger something bad? And if anger is not something bad, how can we use it for our spiritual growth? So our Indian philosophy actually, talks of five passions of the human mind. They are lust, anger, greed, attachment, and egoism. So usually they are seen as very negative things, and it is usually said that the purpose of life is to eliminate these sort of negativities that exist within us. But we can also look at it in a slightly different way, which is perhaps more practical and more positive, in the sense that the goal is not to eliminate or suppress these, but to use these energies constructively for our spiritual growth. So essentially speaking, from the point of view of physics, we all know that energy cannot be created or destroyed. So all these passions of the mind that we talk about, essentially they are energies of different kinds. Just that they have, these energies have gotten channelized into negative sort of tendencies, so they appear to be bad to us, but actually if you think about it from a deeper point of view, they are just energies. So what we can do is that instead of trying to eliminate them or suppress them, we can try to use these energies and channelize them into more positive directions, so that we can benefit out of them spiritually. So now, talking from the point of view of what anger is. So in very layman terms, anger is simply a strong feeling of annoyance, displeasure, or hostility, which can be towards anybody. And sometimes anger can also be towards our own selves. That is also possible. So now, coming to what are the different types of angers, because if we want to address anger properly, we need to realize that anger comes in different types, and which can be very different from each other, and we need to address each type of anger in a proper manner. So according to to the study of modern psychology, there are mainly three types of angers. The first one is what is called dispositional, which is related more to character traits rather than circumstances. So we come across people, who are in general very, agitated most of the times. That, for no apparent reason, they tend to get very upset with various things around them. So that kind of anger is called, is termed as being dispositional anger. Then there's another kind which is known as hasty and sudden, and this is connected to the impulse for self-preservation. When we go out into the market, or when we talk to our family members or our colleagues in office, usually things happen. When they say something or they do something which makes us very upset at that moment, and then in that spurt of anger we end up saying things and doing things which we later regret. And perhaps if we didn't act out of an impulse, but if we were more sort of cautious, those things could have been avoided. So this type of anger, which is not because of our character, but just some situations arise sometimes which make us angry, all of a sudden. So that comes under this under this category of hasty and sudden. Then there's also a third category of anger, which is settled and deliberate. So this comes under this idea of, this is a reaction to perceived deliberate harm or unfair treatment. So this is not something which is hasty and sudden. This is not something which is because of our agitated nature, but something that we perceive as some wrongdoing which is happening either in society or towards us, and which we want to address. And actually it is this third type of anger which can actually be very fruitful in our spiritual growth. So now, among these three types of angers, the first two are things which need to be channelized into this third part, which can actually be very, very constructive in life. So let us to take this quote of Aristotle, which I also mentioned in the summary. is that anybody can become angry. That is very, very easy. But to be angry with the right person, to the right extent, and at the right time, for the right purpose, and in the right manner, that is not easy. And that is not within everybody's power. But that is what the goal is. If you only do easy things, then there is not much fun in life. Life is all about taking up challenges and fulfilling them. So this is the challenge in front of us, that can we take this anger, which seems like a negative energy, and can we channelize into something which is very, very positive? And can we also know how to be angry, and when to be angry, and in what quantity to be angry? And if you can understand that, and if you can master that, it can be a very fruitful trait both for our own spiritual growth and for the benefit of society at large. So, if you take the first type of anger, which is called dispositional anger, this can be caused for by various reasons, and these five are just some of the reasons. So, it can be caused by bad memories of the past, that something happened to you in the past and you are not able to get over it, and that is keeping you agitated all the time. Or this can be due to excessive work pressure, which is becoming very important nowadays. Nowadays in most companies or most workplaces, the expectations are just too large. The targets that our bosses keep for us every month or every 6 months are just too large to meet. So initially it all looks good, that okay, if I meet this target, then I will be able to get a raise, I'll be able to get a promotion. But slowly what happens is that because of this over ambitious targets, that sort of starts burning us out from within, and that leads to this constant state of agitatedness, which also sometimes lead to depression, which is becoming an epidemic nowadays. The third reason why it can also happen is because of ambitions, very high ambitions. There's nothing wrong in being ambitious, but we should know our own limits. That not everybody can become an Einstein. So that analysis is very, very important for us to have. And what happens is that if we are not careful about that kind of analysis, and if we have over high ambitions from ourselves, then obviously those ambitions will not always be met, and that can also lead to a constant state of being agitated and constant state of being angry, and that can also contribute to this type of dispositional anger. Then there also can be high expectations of family members, that our family members may think that we are so smart and we should be able to achieve all those things, which may not always be possible. And the other way around is also possible, that we might have high expectations from family members which they cannot fulfill under realistic situations, and that is actually what is making us agitated all the time. So now what can we do to handle this kind of problems? So bad memories of the past are perhaps some of the hardest to deal with, and there are no simple things that you could do to get over it. But what has been found is that these counseling sessions with a good psychologist, in India, it can be difficult to find a good psychologist, but there definitely some good ones do exist. So these counseling sessions and mindfulness sessions can be very helpful in overcoming these bad memories of the past. For excessive work pressure, no amount of counseling helps, and actually it is our nature that we need to change in this regard, that we have to learn to say a no in a polite but firm manner. That if we find that our boss or our superior is having over high expectations from us, which are not realistic, we should learn to say a no. Of course there might be a fear of losing the job and all, but if we do it in a polite and firm but also reasonable manner, then there are very high chances that our superiors will understand that their expectations are not realistic, and they will try to give us something that is actually achievable in a given time frame. As for high ambitions, it's very important to have a careful analysis of our strengths and weaknesses. If we have the capability to become an Einstein, we should definitely do our best to become so. But if we do not have that ability, then it is very important to know realistically that how much can I achieve. Not everybody can become a billionaire. So I should know, that what are my weaknesses, what are my strengths, what is it that I can actually do in life and achieve. And that will keep us very, very balanced. As for expectations of family members, one of the reasons why this happens is that we usually do not have meaningful discussions with family members. Usually the only time we see them is perhaps at dinner time, and even then most of us are busy with our WhatsApp or something else, and there are actually hardly very few meaningful discussions that happen in families, and that leads to a lack of mutual understanding. If we do not have discussions, if you do not share our views, our problems, our anxieties, then how will the other person understand that where do we stand, what are our problems? So this is something that is very very important, that we need to develop a culture of meaningful discussions in our family with everybody in our family, and that will lead to mutual understanding, which will help in addressing these problems. Then we may also have high expectations from family members, that we may be expecting our spouses, our children, our parents, or our siblings to do things for us which are very very unrealistic. So here, this simple adage of live and let live, this is very very handy and very very important, that you also want a certain amount of space for yourself, you also want a certain amount of freedom for yourself, and the other person also expects the same. Everybody wants their own space, their own way of doing things. So we should be open enough and free enough to let the other one also have that space, so that all of us can live under a very meaningful environment which can be mutually beneficial to all of us. So this is all about this first category of dispositional type of anger. Then there is this second category, which is hasty and sudden, and this is mainly caused by impulsive nature. So some of the tricks which are very helpful in these situations is that whenever say somebody does something to you, or whenever somebody says something to you which ignites this kind of impulsive behavior, it's a good idea to say drink a glass of water, or let's say count from 1 to 100. Basically give yourself some time deliberately before the action sort of sets in, and some amount of that break, some amount of that time which you give to yourself can actually help you in reacting in a much more sane and better manner, in which case you will not have to regret what you have said and done. But it's also important to know that sometimes it may become important to react fast, since delay can be dangerous or even misinterpreted as weakness. So it's not always a good idea to say react after 5 minutes. So silence is good, but too much of silence can also be bad. So that is something that can come only after long hours of self analysis and observation. So if we kind of observe our actions, observe various situations, observe the actions of other people. Nowadays somebody said that you know maybe say 20 years earlier or maybe 30 years earlier, it was sufficient to learn from our own mistakes. But in today's world, that is not true. Today we also need to observe other people, whether it be in movies or whether it be in theater or other forums where we meet people, where we come across people from different backgrounds. It's very important to analyze their moves, their behavior, and try to understand this basic thing, that when do we need to react fast, when do we need to react slow. That judgment has to come very finely within us, and if we can do that, then we'll be able to manage these situations very well. So now coming to the third part, which is perhaps the most important from this point of view, that okay, that we have sort of seen some methods of how we can control our anger and benefit thereby, but how do we actually use it for spiritual growth? That sounds little hard to understand. That management of anger makes sense, but how can anger be useful for spiritual growth? That is a very very important point that needs to be understood. So that comes under this type 3 anger, which is a settled and deliberate kind, and this is also sometimes known as a righteous and revolutionary emotion. Because this is the reason why actually change happens in any society. So there is a very nice quote which says that, love implies anger. A man who is angered by nothing cares about nothing. So, if you actually care about something, and if that thing is not happening properly, then of course it is very natural for you to feel anger. And if you do not feel angered about anything, it's very likely that perhaps you just don't care about anything. So this is this category of anger that needs to be, developed in a very nice and refined manner. So there is a very nice prayer, which is said in this regard, which is, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things which I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. This is a very, very important thing, that there are certain things in our life which we can change, and certain things in our life which we cannot change. So the things which we can change, we must change, and we must have the courage to change them. And the things which we cannot change, we must have the serenity to accept that we cannot make those changes. And so these two things are still easy, that that okay, if I know I can change something, I will change it. If I know I cannot change something, perhaps I will accept it. But the hardest part is knowing the difference. How do we decide, or how do we know that which is the thing which can be changed and which is the thing which cannot be changed? And this is where wisdom is required, and this is where some amount of self analysis, introspection, group discussions, which can help a lot. So I would just like to briefly mention, 7 questions that, suppose if there is any situation or anything, wrong which is happening around us, and something which we feel must change, that we must do something to change that situation. How do we decide whether we should go about changing it or whether we should accept it? So again, there are no easy answers for this, and one has to undergo, their own self-analysis process in order to come up with their own answers. But these 7 questions can help us a lot in sort of forming a good strategy, or at least providing a good starting point where we can think about these issues. So the first question is, what are the things that make you angry? This is a very important question because a person, a given human being, does not have infinite energies and infinite time. Our energy is limited, our time is limited. So at any given point of time, there are many wrong things which are happening around us, and if we go around correcting each one of them, it's just going to exhaust us and we'll actually not be able to make any positive difference anywhere. So the first thing is to analyze is that what are the things that make us angry, so that we can then carefully pick and choose, which are the ones where we need to channelize our energies into. Then the second question is your anger due to egoism or a genuine cause? For example, somebody did something, in my office or in my home, and that made me angry. But did I get angry because that act was genuinely a wrong act, or was it just because my ego was hurt in the process? This difference is very, very important, because many times when we get angry and what looks like a genuine reason which made me angry, but actually it was never a genuine reason. It was just that my ego was hurt and I am not able to take it, and that is what is making me angry. Now that is a very wrong approach towards bringing about changes. If we genuinely want to make a positive contribution to society, we should try to bring about changes where genuinely change is required, and not just because our ego is hurt because of some reason. Then the third question is, which of these problems can you actually solve? So you made a list of problems which makes you angry. You identified that, okay, among these say 10 problems, 7 are the ones which are actually genuinely wrong, and 3 are the ones which are just because of my ego problem. So let me forget those 3 problems and focus on these 7 problems which are a result of a genuine wrong thing happening in society. Out of these 7 things, let me then analyze which of these 7 can I actually solve. And there again, our analysis, or our understanding of our strengths and weaknesses comes into play. That what is it am I actually good at, and what kind of skills do these problem solving require? And if there is a good match between our strengths and the skills which are required in solving that problem, then it makes much more sense to go after those problems. Then, among those problems which I can actually address in a meaningful manner, which of them are most important? Again, if we say come up with 5 problems which are because of a genuine cause, and where we can actually bring about a change, we again cannot go about changing all 5 of them, simultaneously, which is again just not practically possible. So then we need to understand which of these are the most important ones. We need to pick out one or two which we can actually, say will have the most impact on society. Then after that, the fifth one, what skills do you possess to actually implement those solutions? You may have, skills to find solutions. That you may say that, okay, this is a problem and I have found a solution, and that problem is important. But what about implementation of those solutions? Do you have the required skills for that also? Because generating solutions or coming up with a good product and actually selling it in the market can be very, very different. So out of these problems and out of these solutions, which are the ones which can actually be implemented in a practical manner? Then the sixth one is, who all can help you in doing this work? Because whenever we want to bring about a change in society, we cannot do it alone. So if you have identified some problems, which can actually be, done in a meaningful manner, they will still require the help of people around us, without which we cannot implement these solutions. So who all can help you in doing this work? And then if you have a good team for a particular problem, then it becomes much more easier to actually go around and implement this. Then the last one, once you have an answer to all these questions, So what are you waiting for? Go Mohan, light your bulb. This is a nice phrase from a movie Swadesh. So once we have answered all these questions, then sometimes also the problem happens that we get stuck in our own dilemmas, or in our own sort of basic sense of laziness, that okay, we have the solutions, but doing it will take too much time and too much effort. So why do it? But that is where we need to get out of our tamasic nature and do some rajas, and do some work which can actually bring about some change in society. So that is all I have for today. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, I'll be very happy to answer. So either please raise your hand, or you can ask a question on the question box also by typing over there. Thank you very much. Hello. Namaskar Swamiji, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, yes. Very well, very well.
Thank
Can
you.
you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, Swamiji.
Can you? Oh, very good. Uh, First of all, one more beautiful talk presented with great clarity,
Thank you so much.
and thank you for that.
Thank
I have a little question. When we channel energy of the anger
you.
and into spirituality,
Uh,
what would be its expression?
I personally believe so. So we have these, four types of yoga that our scriptures talk about: Raja Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, and we have this thing of Jnana Yoga. So out of
Right,
these four,
right.
I think our channelizers of anger can help in this process of Karma Yoga, because one of the aspects of Karma Yoga,
Oh,
has been taught by Vivekananda, is to actually do service to society. So,
right,
so
right.
when we talk about doing service, we can think of it in a way of bringing about positive changes in society. That if something is wrong, or something is not happening properly, can I do something in a
Mhm.
selfless manner to improve that situation? So this is where I think anger can really.
Okay. So are you saying channelized? Yeah. Oh, yes. So it increases our ability to do service or to do more meaningful things,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes, yeah. This is what I believe, that if we, as in here, anger is not in a
Yeah.
negative sense that I go and say things and do things which I'll regret later on. Not in that sense, but something which sort of makes me feel upset that
Yeah.
why is this
Yeah.
happening in society.
Yeah.
So if I can channelize that anger into actually bringing up a positive
Right.
solution,
Right.
that can have a meaningful impact on society as well as my own inner growth. So, does that answer your question, Swamiji? Hello.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so
Sure.
much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me, Swamiji?
I can hear you, and I am done. Thank you.
Okay.
Maybe someone else has a question,
Okay.
perhaps.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, Swamiji. Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to unmute Miss Namita. Miss Namita, can you hear me? Hello. Miss Namita?
Hello. Yeah, hello.
Yes, 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 yes. So please ask your question.
Yeah, so I sent the question.
Oh,
So
okay.
my question is that, yeah, is the question visible?
Yes, yes. So the question is, sometimes when I'm in a hurry or late for some work, my thoughts start running out of control and I start getting angry. Is this a normal experience? So,
Yeah, yeah, that's my question.
yeah, that's a very relevant and sort of, very, apt question which we face on a daily basis. So everything is normal, there is no definition of normal as such, that anything that happens is a part of normal. But I guess the question that you're trying to ask is that should we accept it as a given reality or can we do something about it?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's my question. Yeah.
Yeah, so of course, see, any situation that we have can be changed. There is so one thing that we may agree or disagree with everything in our shastras, but one thing that makes a lot of sense is that there is nothing that is constant in this world. That everything is in a
Mm-hmm.
state of flux and everything changes with time. So that is also true for our own behavior and our own response. The way we respond in a given situation is also not a static thing. It is also can be changed. So if we feel that
Okay.
if our thoughts are running out of control, is something that needs to be changed. It can be changed. Which is very much possible.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so it is definitely a normal experience because we feel it all the time. But if we think that that we can react in a better manner, then there are ways of doing it. And as I just mentioned, just in the earlier question that our scriptures talk about four paths, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga, Karma Yoga, which are essentially means of controlling the mind. That our mind starts going out of control every once in a while. So there are these four paths available for us to control the mind and make it behave in a sort of manner which we find is more apt. And which one we choose depends on our own personal, preferences. That somebody may find karma yoga to be more sort of, preferable. Somebody may find bhakti yoga to be more preferable. So we can pick and choose, depending on our own preferences. So that is definitely possible.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions? Yes. I'm going to unmute Mr. Shriram. Mr. Shriram, can you hear me? Hello, Mr. Shriram. Okay, his question is here. So the question that Mr. Shriram asks is, since karma is supposed to lead to krodha, should not the root cause be addressed first? Okay, so that's a very sort of very interesting question. And actually, if we see our ancient literature, if we see the Puranas, then we find the story of many saints and sages who seem to have controlled lust, or which is the other name for kama, but somehow have not been able to control the krodha or anger. So yes, it does seem that that it is perhaps easier to control kama and harder to control krodha. So we should perhaps uh, address the first one first, the kama first. But here again, it's perhaps a kind of a personal choice. That here again the difference between perhaps a householder and a sannyasi comes in. That if a person wants to become a sannyasi or a monk, then of course his first priority is to gain control over karma, because otherwise that person cannot live the life of a monk. But for a householder, krodha can become a much larger problem. Because if I'm upset all the time with my family members, if I'm upset all the time in my company, the place where I work, then it's very unlikely that I will be able to lead a reasonable life. So I think it depends on the situation, and there are no sort of standard solutions that work for all. So it depends on what situation that you are in, and which is the problem, or which is the sort of energy which is causing more problems for you. So we need to identify that first, and then address that first. So again, to kind of repeat that, for a person, for example, a monk, a karma may be a much more serious problem, and he or she has to address that first. But for a householder, krodha may be a more immediate problem that needs to be addressed. So I guess it depends, on your personal situation, and it is sort of more troublesome for you. So does that answer your question, Mr. Srinam?
So are we saying that the anger for a householder is different from the anger of a monk, for example, then?
I am not saying they are different, but yeah, the situations are definitely different. That, for example, a householder lives in a family with spouse, kids, maybe parents and maybe siblings. So there we have much more chances of anger coming up on a much more daily basis. But a monk is sort of on his own. Of course, a monk also interacts with other people, but there the attachment is not so much. So the chances of a monk getting angry with other people is not as high as the chances of a householder getting angry with other people. So that way I feel, although the anger is the same, but the problem is sort of aggravated in the householder case, the problem of anger.
Yeah, but doesn't all anger ultimately arise from some expectations which are not fulfilled?
Yes, that is definitely true. Yes.
So the question is, yeah, do we go back to those expectations and try to revise them as opposed to try to, live with them or mitigate them or whatever?
Yeah, so this is exactly where the choice comes in, that that a situation led us to anger, and if that anger was kind of hasty and sudden, which was kind of impulsive kind of an anger, then that is a problem which needs to be addressed in a different manner. But if that anger was of the third kind, which is a settled and a deliberate kind, that if some wrong has been happening over a period of time, which needs to be addressed, so there the choice needs to be made about whether that anger is because of a cause which can be changed or which cannot be changed. So that is where the wisdom sort of comes in, that that we need to identify the cause for the anger if it is in the third type, which is settled and deliberate. And if we can change the situation, we should go ahead and change the situation. But if we cannot change it, then there's no option but to accept it and to live with it.
Yeah, the only question comes in is, do we have the right intellect at the point in time to distinguish between, the egoism and the genuine cause? So as they say, don't throw stones if you're living in a glass house type of a thing.
Right. Yeah, so that is something that has to be developed with time. It's a very difficult thing, I totally agree. But yeah, but if we have to live meaningfully, we perhaps don't have much choice. That is something we have to work hard towards and develop that skill in ourselves. And I'm sure it's doable. It may be easy for some, it may be hard for some, but with the required amount of effort and analysis, it is definitely possible to achieve that wisdom. Where we can differentiate between things which can be addressed and which cannot be addressed. So it is definitely possible. That much I can assure you of.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Miss Bharti, I'm going to unmute you. There's a problem with Miss Bharti's audio. Miss Bharti, I'm not able to unmute you, so if you can please type the question in the question section below, I could read it out. Mr. Srinath, I'm going to unmute you. Mr. Srinath, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you. So I just have a quick question. Can we control our anger by the type of food that we take?
Definitely yes, definitely yes, and that is a huge topic, on which I am definitely not an expert on, but based on whatever I've read and whatever I have, sort of implemented in my own life, that is definitely true. That if we eat sort of, very sort of, extreme kind of food, either extremely oily, extremely spicy, and those kind of things definitely have an effect on our mind. So if we eat, what is called sattvic food, again, the definition of sattvic food is, I don't exactly know how to define it, but something, in simple terms can be taken as, light, which is sort of not, I don't mean something bland and untasty, but something which is, light on the stomach, so that definitely helps us in, keeping us calm and quiet and, much more in control. So definitely, yes, I think we should perhaps, it would be very good sometime to actually, talk to a dietitian and actually, have a webinar on that what, effect food can have on us. But that is definitely true, undoubtedly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? I'm trying to unmute Ms. Bharti once again. It's not working. Okay, so if there are no more questions, I would like to thank all attendees once again for having spared their valuable time. And if you have any thoughts or any comments which you would like to share with me, please do so over email. I'll be very happy to have a discussion with you offline. Thank you so much once again. Thank you, Vibaji, for organizing
Thank you.
this.
Yeah, thank you, Kushalji. It was very nice and interesting
Thank
talk. Really, this PowerPoint also is very good. Please send to us, okay?
Sure, sure. I will do so. I will. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you once again. Yeah.